Hi, I'm Kat, and today I have for you a word in Romanian and a true crime case. The word in Romanian, well, actually, the greeting in Romanian for today is it a greeting? Is it a greeting? Yeah, I think you might call it that. Ce faci? Ce faci? Ce faci? Well done, guys. You just said, how are you? Yes, before we get started with today's case, my usual disclaimer, I don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in the video. This is for educational purposes only, and all the information I'm giving you is already found in the public domain, and I will also be sharing my own views and opinions around the case I'm talking about. Thank you so much. Sabina was running late to meet a friend, so like never before she decided to take a shortcut through Cater Park. It was out of character for her to take shortcuts in the dark through a park. She would always feel uneasy about that, and she always avoided that route. But she didn't want to keep her friend waiting, so she decided to walk through the park so she can get quicker to the depot bar where her friend was waiting for her. Sadly, little did Sabina know that on that night, after dark, a monster was lurking in the shadows waiting for his prey. She had no idea of what was behind her. Sabina would never leave the park alive again. So let's get into all of the details. And I can't believe that I'm saying this, especially because this case has been widely covered, but I am not 100% sure of Sabina's date of birth. In my videos, you know that I like to mention victims' date of birth, but either I am an idiot and I somehow missed an article or a video where her date of birth is mentioned, or her date of birth is not so much mentioned. I went through various articles, I watched various videos, and even though we do know that she was 28 years old when she was sadly murdered, I actually checked Wikipedia and her date of birth is not mentioned. I even went on findagrave.com where I usually check for birth dates, and the user did add a date. However, I found conflicting details about this, even though on findagrave.com is mentioned that Sabina was born on 12th of August 1993. My deduction and math and conclusion leads me to believe that she was in fact born on 23rd of October 1992, considering that her sister held a birthday memorial on her 29th birthday and the memorial was held on the 23rd of October 2021. She sadly passed away in September 2021, which would mean that she would have been 29 years old in October 2021, which again, by my calculations, she was born in 1992. So if her 29th birthday memorial was held on 23rd of October 2021, my best guess is that Sabina Nessa was born on 23rd of October 1992. If you do have any personal knowledge about Sabina's date of birth and is different than what I mentioned, please do let me know in the comment section down below. And I really do apologize if I got the date wrong. Anyway, moving on, because I think I confused you already with my calculations. Sabina was born in London to her father Abdul Rauf and her mother Azibun Nessa. Her parents arrived in London from Bangladesh in 1980 in search for a better life, where her father found work as a chef. They would have 4 daughters. Jebina, the eldest, was born in North London in 1991, followed just 13 months later by Sabina. By then, the family moved to a semi-detached council house in a quiet cul-de-sac in Sandy, Bedfordshire, where they still live to this day. 10 years later, the family would welcome the arrival of 2 more daughters, which completed the family. Around the same time, Sabina's parents, Abdur and Azibun, became property owners, buying the council house they lived in for £35,000 under the right to buy scheme. Now, if you are not familiar with this, when you live in a council house in the UK, usually there is a scheme which gives you the right, after a certain period of time of living there, to buy the house you live in at under the market price. So you would get a substantial discount on the house price. The longer you live in the house, the more discount you get. I'm not sure how London was in terms of these discounts, but the council house that I live in, after 10 years of me living here, I would only need to pay around £40,000 for the house I live in, and right now the house is valued at around £130,000. Sabina and the family was well known to their neighbors. They've always been a lovely family, and Sabina was a wonderful girl. Sabina became a primary school teacher, but before that, between 2011 and 2014, she had studied sociology at Greenwich University, where she was remembered for her love of learning. Her personal tutor and lecturer would say that Sabina didn't have a bad bone in her body. After completing her degree, Sabina took a teaching postgraduate degree at the University of Bedfordshire between 2019 and 2020. She also obtained the qualification to teach English as a foreign language around the same time. Even though she only joined her primary school in 2020, she already had a big impact on her young students. She was an amazing teacher. She was kind, caring, and really dedicated to her pupils. Sabina taught a year 1 class at Rushy Green Primary School in Catford, where her class had 30 young students. I mean, by this point and throughout all my research that I did for this case, I could never find any negative thing being said about Sabina. Everything that I found, it's all positive about her. To her family, Sabina was their rock and guardian. For her, it was all about education, but not only for herself, it was for her sisters as well. Badar Uddin Ahmed, who runs the restaurant where Sabina's father works, said that it was important to Sabina that they get an education. Badar is very close to the family, and the siblings regarded him as an uncle. Sabina's parents couldn't speak or write English, so Sabina tried to manage the difficulties this would have created, even dealing with school matters, administration, and replying to letters. She was always so hungry to learn, and she would even spend her pocket money buying books. She knew that education would give her more opportunities and put her in a better place, so she always wanted to learn. Getting her A-levels, going to university, working for her masters, and also doing jobs in between. Sabina hoped that one day she could teach a language abroad. She had wanted to go to Dubai. She had a bright future ahead of her. She was a bright, intelligent, wonderful woman. She was an amazing role model who defied all norms, strove to be independent, and was powerful, fearless, bright, and had an amazing soul. Sabina had recently moved to a block of new-built flats in Kidbrooke, southeast London. She only moved to the area a few months before the tragic events of today's case, as it was close to her teaching job in Catford. On Tuesday, 14th of September 2021, Kochi Selamaj booked an expensive room at the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne for the night of Friday, 17th of September 2021.
But it is what happened earlier that raises questions. At lunchtime on the day of the attack, he'd tried to check into a room early he'd booked at the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne. But staff had become concerned and called the police, but they didn't attend, claiming the matter was resolved.
Kochi had absolutely no reason to do that, considering that he lived nearby, but he did it in the hopes that he would have sensual activity in that room. He booked into the hotel, and 2 hours before the tragic events of today's case, in the late afternoon or early evening, he arranged to meet his ex-wife. He contacted her in a failed attempt to have sex with her. In the previous months, Kochi Selamaj displayed his violent personality behind closed doors. I know that it might seem random, but it will make sense later on, so let's see who Koçi Selamash is. He was born on 4th of May 1985 in the Albanian city of Elbasan, and because his parents and the family were poor, they decided to move over to Greece for better opportunities. However, even though Koçi's parents returned to Albania, him and his siblings remained in Greece, thinking that the opportunities would be better there. Koçi had no criminal record in Albania. His parents and the rest of the family had high hopes, especially after Koçi decided to leave Greece and settle in the UK. Koçi's last trip to his home country was in September. He stayed for just under 1 week, and on the 9th of September he boarded a budget flight back to Luton, UK. By then, Koçi's marriage looked to be over. He probably knew by this point that his future in the UK won't be as certain as it was. He entered the UK illegally in 2015, arriving on a lorry after living in Greece. He based himself in Eastbourne, East Sussex, working as a pizza delivery driver and garage attendant. He married his wife on 5th of November 2018, and they lived in a flat above a row of shops in Eastbourne. As an EU citizen, his wife had greater UK immigration rights. Earlier that year, the UK government announced the EU settlement scheme, which gave EU nationals like myself, and very important for Koçi, their spouses, permission to remain here after Brexit. There are quite a few questions as to why Koçi would marry his wife. It's believed he married her so that he can legally stay in the UK. With his position in the UK secure, now Koçi had the freedom to travel in and out of the UK. Koçi was born in Albania, and after getting his settlement from his wife, he would regularly go back home for visits, beginning 2 months after their wedding. He went back 6 times in 2.5 years. But by the summer of 2021, Koçi's marriage broke down because of his violent behavior. His wife moved out of their home. More than once, he put his hands around her throat. His wife worked at Eastbourne's Grand Hotel, and on 17th of September, Koçi booked a 300 to 400 pounds per night room there in the hotel. When he became argumentative at the check-in desk, constantly questioning why he had to pay the bill up front, staff started to feel really uneasy and uncomfortable with him. Something just wasn't right with his demeanor. They also noticed that his home address was close by, and after he refused to pay for the room, the staff at the hotel decided to call 101. No officer was sent. However, the police do say that the operator dealt with the call correctly, because Koçi later on did eventually pay for the room. What Koçi's wife did not know was that he had booked the room at the hotel that she was working in. He asked her to meet him in the parking lot without even mentioning that he checked in at the same hotel she was working in. He met his wife in his car in the hotel car park, where he asked her to have sex with him. She, of course, rejected him, and then he drove off alone. She went back into the hotel. He went back to his room without her knowing and stayed there for a while. Then he went to London. He stayed on the 3rd floor while she was working on the 2nd floor. She only found out that he was there later on when her boss told her. Ionela Gherghișan, a Romanian national who worked as a cleaner and part-time belly dancer, married Koçi at Eastbourne Town Hall on Bonfire Night 2018. She had experienced his increasingly erratic behavior firsthand. Koçi is Muslim and Ionela is Christian. Whilst Koçi wasn't very religious, Ionela was, and they had strong conversations about that. Neither spoke the other's language. They communicated mainly in Italian, which both spoke well. Some friends described their wedding as a rushed wedding, while others say that they married for love. Neighbors remember hearing loud arguments when the couple first moved in. Their relationship appears to have gone downhill sharply early last year, when Koçi started to pressure his wife to move to London, saying that he found work there. At the time, he was delivering pizzas for Domino's. Ionela said that she didn't want to go. He then changed. He started to become cold, aggressive and violent. Of the 3 incidents of strangulation, the first took place after Ionela failed to answer her phone. On another occasion, he was angry that she had been in touch with an ex. The last time he did it, she had just come back from work and brought him food that she knew he liked. He was dismissive and aggressive. He treated her very badly. She felt like he hated her. They weren't even sleeping in the same bed or eating together in the house. He became violent in the months before the hotel encounter. She moved out of the family home last August after he attacked her, and they had very little contact until the day when he booked the hotel room. He attacked her last August after he missed her phone calls while working. There were times when she was scared to stay in the same house with him because she was afraid for her life. He tried to strangle her 3 times, but the last time it happened, she became really terrified. He came home from work and put his hands around her neck, yelling, "Why didn't you answer your phone?" She was in bed and she was in shock. He snapped out of it and let go of her, but he didn't apologize. The final time that he attacked Ionela, it left her so scared that she decided to leave him. This was 6 weeks before the tragic events of today's case. She didn't go to the police because she didn't think that they would believe her. There had been no witnesses and she didn't have any bruises. She previously stayed with him out of fear. On the day of their hotel encounter, he was acting strangely. He was very anxious and impatient, and she's never seen him like that before. She saw a bottle of alcohol in his car and she could even smell it on his breath. He wasn't drunk, but he was acting really strangely. He tried to have sex with her in his car in the car park, but she said no, so he left and Ionela then went back to work. After leaving, Kochi first drove to Brighton and then travelled to southeast London, parking in Pegler Square in Kidbrooke. He had no connection with this area with its new built blocks of flats miles from where he lived. CCTV captured him buying a rolling pin at the local Sainsbury's, chili flakes and an energy drink. He used his bank card to pay for the shopping. He purchased the rolling pin so he can use it as a weapon. I don't know why he purchased the chili flakes and the energy drink. Maybe he was looking for, some more energy to commit a disgusting attack that would follow. I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to look suspicious, buying only the rolling pin. I don't know. But either way, we already know, if you are trying to buy something, don't use your bank card because it's completely traceable and they can check it. Yeah.
To Sainsbury's supermarket in Kidbrooke, southeast London. He bought a rolling pin, but it was claimed he later came across a driver's warning triangle and realised this was a better weapon.
Meanwhile, at the end of a working week, Sabina Nessa, who lived locally, was on her way to meet a friend for a Friday night out at the Depot bar. In the past, she had conversations with her friends about the importance of sticking to the main road and not use any shortcuts, especially after dark. But on that evening, she was running late to meet her friend, so she decided to take a shortcut through Cater Park, close to Pegler Square. Kochi changed his mind about using the rolling pin as a weapon, and so he went back to his car and took the metal traffic triangle instead. The emergency triangle that you have in the boot of your car? The rolling pin was later recovered from the wheel well of the boot of his car, which is exactly where you would expect the weapon. He picked up the rolling pin, went back to his car and realized that the better weapon was the emergency triangle. CCTV footage later revealed how Kochi, who had been hanging around in the park, spotted Sabina as she passed through on her way to meet her friend. Kochi targeted her. He then checked that she was alone and he ran towards her. He was seen walking along the path with his hood up and the traffic sign in his hand. He chose the 2-foot-long traffic sign as his murder weapon. He then crosses paths with Sabina and he turns around as they walk past each other. He runs up behind her and starts hitting her repeatedly with the traffic sign. Sabina was unaware that Kochi ran up behind her. He struck her 34 times over the head with a metal traffic triangle before carrying her away unconscious. He then pulled up her clothes, removed her tights and underwear and strangled her before covering her body in grass. He approached her at speed and savagely attacked her close to and on a bench. She tried to defend herself as shown by the defensive injuries that she suffered, but after hitting her 34 times with the emergency triangle, he rendered her unconscious. In the whole process, some of her ribs were broken and her liver was damaged. He then dragged her off the beaten track and off camera up a bank and out of sight into longer grass where he spent around 20 minutes with her in total. He briefly returned to the bench to collect the emergency triangle which had been damaged in the attack. During the 20 minutes that he was with Sabina in the long grass, he asphyxiated her by compressing her neck, probably in an arm lock for 15 to 30 seconds, removed the tights and underwear that she was wearing, which involved removing her boots and then putting them back on, lifted up her clothes to expose the mid to lower parts of her body, lifted her top, exposing her bra, and posed her with legs apart and her hands in the pockets of her jacket, before attempting to cover her body in grass and taking her tights and underwear, which were never recovered with him when he left the scene, after using wet wipes to remove any trace of his presence on the bench. Whilst there were no injuries to Sabina's private parts and no evidence of the presence of any of Kochi's bodily fluids, the removal of her tights and underwear, the way in which her outer clothing was moved, and the way in which she was posed were all to enable him to have intimate access to her. The taking of her tights and underwear away from the scene was either because they were trophies or was done to avoid any trace of him being found on them, or maybe even both. Sabina's body was found nearly 24 hours later by a dog walker near a community center in the park. Because of the way that he left Sabina's body, together with the fact that he earlier in the day asked his wife to have sex with him, police were certain that this was a sexually motivated killing. 3 days before he killed her, Sabina mentioned being concerned about being in the park after dark, but it's highly likely that she chose this route because it was the quickest. After killing Sabina, Kochi then drove back to Eastbourne, stopping on the way in a shopping area in Tunbridge Wells in Kent to dump the murder weapon in the River Tyne.
The Albanian-born garage worker then drove into London, where the prosecution claimed he skulked around in search of someone to have a sexual encounter with. Towards 8 p.m, he was seen at a Sainsbury's supermarket in Kidbrooke, southeast London. He bought a rolling pin, but it was claimed he later came across a driver's warning triangle and realised this was a better weapon. It was at Cater Park in Kidbrooke that Salamaj attacked Sabina. She had been oblivious to him running up behind her before he hit her over the head 34 times. The prosecution alleged he proceeded to strangle her, remove her clothes, and cover her body in the grass. Later, Salamaj drove to Tunbridge Wells and threw the broken traffic sign into the River Tees.
Just after midnight, he made his way through the lobby of Eastbourne's Grand Hotel and went to the room he booked earlier.
Finally, he returned to his hotel in the early hours of the 18th.
Kochi left no forensic evidence at the scene, which of course was frustrating for the detectives. However, his murder weapon, the metal traffic triangle, gave them a vital clue. Quote, "On the cameras we could see that fluorescent glint going out of the park in a certain direction," said Detective John. "That was the breakthrough. It all followed from that." End of quote.
Yes, the streets are safe for women. I'd like to reassure the public around that. I'd like to reassure that people should be allowed to walk and should be free to walk around free from fear. And my officers, as you see behind me, we'll make sure that that can take place. If there are any members of the public that do fear that, please speak to my officers and we will listen and take those concerns on board.
What's changed since the death of Sarah Everard?
I think the main things that are changing is one, we're listening to people, we're understanding where people are feeling not so safe, and we're putting out patrols to make sure that we try and do that. This isn't just a policing issue. There's lots of issues to be able to make people feel safe in open spaces, and we're working with our partners to ensure we do that. My message to people living in this area is, as I've said already, my officers are here, they're your officers, they wish to stand with you, they wish to understand the concerns that you have, and they wish to make sure that they are with you at the tragic vigil that will take place on Friday.
Just a side note here, maybe if Kochi wouldn't have used the emergency triangle, the police wouldn't catch him. Maybe if he would have used the rolling pin, just like he thought from the beginning, then maybe the police wouldn't catch him, but luckily he changed his mind on the murder weapon. Working around the clock, going through footage from local cameras, the murder team began closing in on the killer. After 5 days of studying the footage, they worked out what they thought he looked like and what he was wearing. They had hundreds of hours of CCTV in the office. The registration plate of Kochi's silver Nissan Micra was picked up by ANPR cameras, and mobile cell site evidence showed that he was traveling to London. A week after Sabina's body was found, police identified Kochi Selamaj as the prime suspect. The night before Kochi's arrest, Ionela went back to the flat to talk about their breakup. She had no idea her husband was being hunted by police. His face was different and he didn't let her into the flat, and he didn't want to talk. Ionela was later interviewed by detectives. They allowed her to pick up some of her possessions, which is when she noticed that a favorite jacket of hers was missing. She was told by police that a jacket matching his description was found at the murder scene covering Sabina's body. On 23rd of September, police in Lewisham arrested a 38-year-old man on suspicion of murder, who was then released under investigation. 3 days later, and after 9 days of Sabina's murder, on 26th of September 2021, overnight, police forced the door of Kochi's Eastbourne flat and arrested him. He had been identified via CCTV footage of the attack. He didn't say anything. He was lying on the bed and he was described as being calm and compliant. The search team found his trainers. Blood on them was analyzed and linked him to Sabina. His silence continued during police interviews. A pathologist later said there was evidence of both blunt force trauma to Sabina's head and asphyxiation, either of which could have caused her death. When Kochi was charged, he suddenly asked, "What will happen if I tell you everything?" Because he was already charged, detectives couldn't really ask him any more questions. At his first court appearance, he indicated he would be pleading not guilty. But in February, at the Old Bailey and with Sabina's family watching, he was asked to enter a formal plea. He broke the silence with the word guilty. Kochi Selamaj refused to go to court for the sentencing, and so Sabina's family faced an empty dock with their victim impact statements. The barrister who headed Kochi's legal team, Lewis Power Queen's Counsel, spent months representing a man who failed to engage or give any explanation for what he has done. Quote, "He has shown no remorse. He is as cold as ice," Mr. Power told the BBC. Kochi Selamaj was recently transferred from prison to Broadmoor High Security Hospital, so his mental state can be assessed as he begins his 36-year sentence.
Sabina Nessa, another young life ended brutally on the street by a stranger. Walking to a bar on a Friday night, she messaged a friend to say she was 10 minutes away.
That's when Sabina Nessa decided to take a shortcut through this park in southeast London. The court heard that she was running late and usually avoided the park for fears of her safety.
Waiting here was someone with a history of violent behaviour. Kochi Selamaj, an Albanian living in East Sussex, had no criminal record in the UK or abroad. He pleaded guilty earlier this year. Today, in the High Court, the judge said Miss Nessa was the wholly blameless victim of an absolutely appalling murder, which was entirely the fault of the defendant. He added, it is a striking feature of the defendant's case that clearly deliberately it is not suggested by him that he had any remorse for what he did to Sabina Nessa.
How could he do that? How could he hurt my sister, knowing that the thought that he was waiting for some woman to attack her and do what he wanted to do? I was just thinking, what a horrible animal, vile animal he is.
At his sentencing, which he refused to attend, members of Sabina's family watched harrowing footage of what happened shortly afterwards. As Salamaj ran up to her from behind, CCTV captured part of the attack. He was arrested a week later and then charged, but he has never explained his actions to the police.
Salamaj was arrested. He was very calm, confident, showed no emotion whatsoever. He was interviewed on a number of occasions and didn't provide any answers, which is his right at the end of the day.
His depravity extinguished a life that was celebrated just days after she died. Near the spot where she was found, hundreds remembered Sabina Nessa, and her death sent shockwaves across the country, with many women feeling that could have been my friend, my sister, my teacher. Described in court as someone destined to inspire so many lives.
We've heard from the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, who says tackling violence against women and girls is central to her beating crime plan, as is making the streets safer for everyone. At the end of the sentencing today, the family came out and they hugged supporters here. Some were holding signs against violence against women. And I think one of the most striking things that the judge said today in court was that Sabina Nessa had every right, as her family said, to be walking through the park, all glammed up, out to enjoy herself at the end of a long week at work. And this case has once again reignited the debate around violence against women and what can be done to make women feel safer on the streets. Simon.
Thousands of miles away in the maritime village of Borș in southern Albania, Bardosh Selamaj told the BBC that he was astounded his nephew was now a convicted murderer in the UK. He said that Koç's retired parents are in a state of misery. Sabina Nessa's murder was not initially reported widely in the media, and journalist Katrina Mirpuri created a viral post on Instagram calling out the lack of media attention, which eventually spearheaded the mass media coverage and brought more pressure for action to tackle violence against women in London. Mayor of London Sadiq Khan described violence against women as a national epidemic. Her murder was compared to those of Biba Henry and Nicole Smallman in June 2020 and Sarah Everard in March 2021. As in the case of Biba and Nicole, Sabina's death raised concerns that the killing of women of color were still taken less seriously by law enforcement. Sabina's sister, Jebana Yasmin Islam, said that while Clive Efford MP supported her family, more senior office holders had been useless. She suggested that Priti Patel was unsupportive and used Sabina's name for publicity, saying, quote, "You haven't even bothered to ask what the family are going through since the death of my sister. Lack of support from yourself and Boris Johnson just shows how important it is to tackle male violence to you guys," end of quote. She complained the lack of support for her family was due to their ethnicity. Vigils were held in several cities to honor Sabina's life. Her family spoke at a rally at East London Mosque, attended by faith leaders, women's group and local politicians, including Rushanara Ali MP. A video message from Zara Mohammed, Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, was played at the mosque and the candle was lit at 10 Downing Street. A spokesperson from Citizens UK observed that the day Sabina Nessa was killed was the same day the government released its strategy on tackling violence against women and girls. Dame Vera Bayard attended the vigil for Sabina in London and said that societal change is needed and the police must do more. Also in attendance at the London vigil were Zara Sultana, Mandu Raid, Rabina Khan and Afsana Begum. Flowers were laid on behalf of the Duchess of Cambridge.
We have lost an amazing, caring, beautiful sister who left this world far too early. Words cannot describe how we are feeling. This feels like we are stuck in a bad dream and can't get out of it. Our world is shattered. We have simply lost for words. No family should go through what we are going through. Once again, thank you for everyone for coming and showing your support for my sister. Thank you.
Pass me the lighter.
We see something happening and ignore it. And I'm sorry for what still happens. But we have to create change. Don't you agree? We need change. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us.
Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over.
I'd like to introduce on stage now Janet Davey MP.
Crime against women. It's unacceptable and it must stop.
And the Holy Spirit will be upon each and every one of us, and especially on Sabina's family and friends.
Our God, the most loving, the most gracious, the most merciful.
That have been happening in the street of London and elsewhere. And we will never forget also this one. And I want you to repeat after me. We will never forget. We will never forget. Thank you very much.
At the vigil that took place in Eastbourne less than 3 weeks after Sabina was murdered, emotions were still running high. After all, the South Coast town was where Kochi Selamash was later arrested. Ionela, Kochi's ex-wife, attended that same vigil. A friend who comforted her that evening said that they met by accident at the vigil. Quote, "She tapped me on the shoulder and started sobbing and I hugged her. She cried all evening until late at night. When we went by the sea and threw flowers in the water, she kept saying she doesn't understand what he had against Sabina and that it would have made more sense if he would kill her, not Sabina." End of quote.
Still low below that. So chartered use of all their names and ages. The oldest being 93, the youngest 15. We're all here tonight. We're having to consider the risk of going out alone past 6 p.m. and potentially getting attacked, raped or murdered. A teacher, a daughter, a sister, an auntie, a friend. Described as someone who loved her family, a beautiful soul, open-minded, brilliant and kind. A person who was always smiling and helping others. It's great. It's just what we hoped for, because what we need is amplified voices. We need people to come together and make a stand, because the more of us that come together, the louder we're going to be, the more we're going to be heard, and the more seriously we're going to be taken, because it's a really serious subject. It is an absolute crisis that, you know, it's not getting any better. It's not staying the same, it's getting worse. And it's something that we need to shout about and change before it's too late. I mean, how many more women need to die before we do? Men can really help us and really help with this by speaking out and being brave and being leaders. And if they see any injustice, any degrading of women, any attacks on women, they need to stand up and put a stop to it. I think that would really help. You know, come with us, help women, men and women together. We can fight this.
Following her husband's arrest, Ionela gave up her hotel cleaning job and moved to London to try and rebuild her life. She feels very ashamed that she is the wife of a murderer, and she's afraid to leave her room. She can't get it out of her mind that it could have happened to her. Quote, "I feel like it should have been me instead of her. I feel like God saved my life again and chose to keep me alive." End of quote. Ionela has since returned back to her home country in Romania. To celebrate what would have been Sabina's 29th birthday in October, family members gathered in the park where she was killed to release balloons in her memory. They were given packets of sunflower seeds to plant, Sabina's favorite flower. "They are bright and they stand up tall," her sister said, "just like her." Kochi Selamaj was charged with murder on 27th of September and appeared at central London's Old Bailey via video link from Agem Prison Wormwood Scrubs in White City, West London on 30th of September. A post-mortem was inconclusive as to Sabina's cause of death. After a preliminary hearing on 30th of September 2021, at which the trial was fixed for 7th of June this year, Kochi Selamaj pleaded not guilty to murder before Mr. Justice Wall on 16th of December 2021, although after accepting that he was the person who had struck Sabina and rendered her unconscious. On 27th of January, the defense confirmed that Kochi was the attacker, but made clear that he didn't accept having removed some of Sabina's clothing or raising her dress, or that she was exposed, or that the killing was motivated. On 14th of February, the defense indicated that he would be pleading guilty to murder at the hearing on 25th of February. A pre-trial hearing was set for 25th of February, where at the Old Bailey he pleaded guilty and also accepted sexual motivation without providing any detail whether then or since. A trial scheduled to last approximately 2 weeks was set for June 2022. Kochi Selamaj was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 36 years. In mitigation, Louis Power Queen's Counsel said that Kochi Selamaj's family, who had attended court, were in shock and total disbelief. His client provided no explanation for why he killed Sabina, adding that he simply accepts that he did it. His defense barrister said that Kochi has been moved to Broadmoor to be assessed. Mr. Justice Sweeney added he believes that Kochi Selamaj gained sexual pleasure from murdering Sabina. Miss Morgan Queen's Counsel said, quote, "It was out of character for Sabina Nessa to walk through Cater Park after dark. She had in fact discussed that very issue with her flatmate, being concerned about being in the park after dark. It seems likely that she chose to walk across the park that night because, as the messages show, she was in fact running later to her meeting, and that was the quickest route to get to the depot bar from her address." End of quote. Detective Chief Inspector Neil John, paying tribute to Sabina, said, quote, "Sabina was just 28 years old when her life was cruelly taken away. She was a sister, daughter, aunt. She was a teacher, loved by her pupils, and a friend to many. Her family described her as fun, determined and kind. I don't want to waste too many words on Selamaj. He's an evil coward who cruelly took away the bright future of a young woman and has never given any explanation for his actions." End of quote. Jabina Islam, Sabina's sister, said that Kochi is an awful human being and doesn't deserve his name to be said. She said her sister was an amazing role model who was powerful, fearless, bright, and just an amazing soul. Sabina's parents, Abdul Ruf and Sabina Nessa, said in a statement, quote, "You had no right to take her away from us in such a cruel way. The moment the police officer came to our house and told her she was found dead, our world shattered into pieces. How could you do such a thing to an innocent girl walking by, minding her own business? You are not a human being. You are an animal." End of quote. Head teacher Lisa Williams described the devastating impact on Sabina's school. On her class of 30 students, she said, quote, "For the rest of their lives, these young children will never be able to comprehend why someone murdered their teacher, and the world in which they live is not safe for them to play in a park." End of quote. Lisa makes it clear that Sabina was an incredibly talented teacher whose loss has had a devastating impact on the school at many levels. In particular, she underlines that for the rest of their lives, the young children at the school will be tormented by the fact that they had a teacher who was murdered. Rashi Green Primary School have started a fundraiser to build Sabina Nessa's memorial garden for pupils and the community at her school. They are looking to build an outdoor cooking space and edible garden in memory of their much loved and much missed teacher. The garden will offer children and the community a safe outdoor space to learn about nature, growing produce and cooking food, topics that Sabina was passionate about. The school are raising funds for basics like topsoil and raised beds, seeds, fruit trees, cooking equipment and educational resources. As well as a place to learn, their goal is to create a lasting and positive legacy for a talented, caring teacher who made a huge impact on the school and children's lives. Quote, "When Luke and Reb, our school chefs, started growing a few herbs and vegetables, Sabina was the first teacher to take her class to have a look. At forest school, Sabina was always so involved. Without fail, Sabina ate with her class every day and she didn't sit there quietly. She would be involved, taking them to the serving hatch, always encouraging them to talk to the chefs. Creating a safe outdoor space where children can learn and thrive seems the perfect way to do something positive for Sabina. If anyone is able to donate, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts," Lisa Williams, the head teacher, said. The fundraising target is £14,500, but they would also like to have a cooking area and hope to raise more. Any donation, big or small, will make a difference. Quote, "We'd started planting some herbs and building a few beds to grow some produce for the kitchens. I'd mentioned it to Sabina. The next morning, Sabina arrived with her class to have a look. They were clutching bits of paper and started drawing leaves and sticks. There wasn't much for them to see, but I remember us saying how much the children enjoyed it and how great it could be. Growing food at the school always felt important, but to build something incredible for Sabina would make it mean so much more," Luke, the school's head chef, said. So far, at the time of me making the content for this video, 496 supporters donated the target amount, and this is their plan for how they want the outdoor classroom to look like. I think that this is just amazing, a brilliant idea, and they will make sure that Sabina Nessa will never be forgotten. This is such a heartbreaking case. It's just horrible. We should feel safe at any time of day and night. We shouldn't need to always watch our backs when we go out for fear of getting attacked. It's just horrific, and we show our children that even in a park they can't be safe. As for Kochi Selamaj, I think that this was a crime of opportunity for him. I think it was planned. I mean, he went to Sainsbury's to buy a rolling pin to use as a murder weapon, but then he decided the emergency triangle is a better murder weapon because it was heavier. I believe he was motivated. He was rejected earlier in the day by his ex-wife, and he had booked a hotel room in the hopes of having sex. And when his wife rejected him, he went to London to find someone else to have sex with, even if by force. I mean, we have to remember that he paid for the room between £300 to £400. So, you know, he knowingly went to that park because he was secluded, it was dark, and he waited in the shadows until someone walked by and he decided to attack. He wanted his sex, willingly or not. And sadly, Sabina paid the ultimate price for it. And she was only on her way to the depot bar to meet an old friend, excited for the date. Sadly, she never left that park alive. The very thing that she was concerned about in the dark, and the very first time that she picked up the courage to use that shortcut, it was the time that she sadly lost her life. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please do let me know what do you think in the comment section down below. Take care, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!